Oh, you.
And I suspect Chuck has heard a joke or two.
Yeah, a joke or two. Yeah. It's so funny because by the time I was in high school, I'd heard them all, and so I would actually look at people and just be like, "Really? Is that the best you can do?" And it totally killed their joke. It was funny. Anyway. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the JavaScript Jabber Show. This week we're going to be talking about whether or not we think HTML5 and JavaScript can really replace Flash. We've actually invited a Flash developer, and that's Tom, is it Beatty?
Yep.
So Tom, you want to introduce yourself really quickly, and then we'll introduce the rest of the panel?
Sure. My name is Tom Beatty, as you said it correctly, and I run a small one-man Flash development shop. I specialize in doing online games, and I've been doing Flash for about 13 years now.
All right. If somebody wants a Flash online game, how do they get a hold of you?
Go to dedge.com, the letter D, the word edge. You can go to dimensionsedge.com, but I found a lot of people can't spell dimension, so I had to get a shorter domain. So dedge.com.
All right, dedge.com. All right. Jameson. We also have Jameson Dance.
Hi, I'm Jameson Dance. I've heard the joke before.
We also have AJ O'Neill.
Contrary to popular belief, I'm not black.
What?
Okay.
I thought we were going with last name jokes. Maybe I missed that one by 10 years.
Oh.
Shaquille, basketball player.
Okay.
I've heard of him.
You gotta cater to your audience, AJ. This is a group of software developers.
Look, it's not my fault y'all are retarded, okay?
Hey, you know
And
what?
you just said y'all, so you're clouding the issue a lot right now. I'm confused.
I'm
It's
from
like
the
really
East.
meta joke, and you're secretly black.
Yeah, we're all geeks. We can go look up Shaquille O'Neal on Wikipedia and figure out who he is, right?
This is true.
He's
All
a
right.
movie star, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Shazam.
I was gonna say he's been in a couple of terrible travesty movies. Anyway, I'm Charles Max Wood from TeachMeToCode.com, and anyway, let's go ahead and jump in on this. So I think a lot of the discussion over Flash comes from Adobe open sourcing Flash or Flex, or I'm still not completely sure what's going on there. Maybe Tom can tell us.
I think we should get like the history of Flash first, just to kind of lay the groundwork.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
You mean
maybe-
like
can we do that? Yeah,
13
like
years back? All right.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, a brief history of Flash, kind of like a brief history of time.
Yeah, sure. Well, okay. Flash started out really as a designer and animator's tool, not really a development tool. When Flash first came out, well, okay, it was Future Splash. Adobe bought it. We had Flash. It really didn't become popular until version 3.
What about like Shockwave? I remember playing lots of Shockwave games, and I thought those were the same thing as Flash.
Well,
Is that further on in the story?
Macromedia, excuse me, I did say Adobe. It was actually Macromedia that bought Future
Oh,
Splash.
okay.
Okay. Shockwave originally started out with a program called Director. Director was the end-all, be-all for creating CD-ROM content. Everything used to be on CD-ROMs, and then the internet came along, and
Hi, Internet.
yeah, and CD-ROM sort of went away. So Macromedia said, okay, we need to adjust this director content so it can be played on the internet, and that's what Shockwave was. Well, then Macromedia bought Flash, and they, kind of added the Shockwave label to it because it was more interactive internet content, so let's just kind of lump it in with Director. And so that's why you have SWF files. It stands for Shockwave Flash. Now, the problem with Director was it was a cool program, but it was really never really designed to put content on the internet. So the files are fairly big and clunky, and Flash was so much cooler. So Director sort of disappeared, and Shockwave Games kind of disappeared too, and everything got replaced with Flash. But, Flash had its problems too. When it first came out, it didn't have a full programming language behind it. It had, it had a timeline, and you could animate with it, and you could move graphics around, and you could click a button and go to another animation or another page or something. But they didn't have any variables. You couldn't do that much with it other than make really cool banner ads. So eventually, with Flash 4, they added variables. You could actually start making games, and that's when I first started really getting into the programming aspects of Flash. But the big problem is when you take a bunch of designers and say, okay, now you can program, what you end up with is not exactly great programming all the time. Flash kind of carried that tradition for quite some time. The programming language ActionScript got more and more robust, and it became more powerful. It was actually becoming a pretty nice language, all things considered. But it was still primarily designers that were using it, and so you've seen those big websites. There are lots of movie websites, especially. You get these huge, monstrous websites that take forever to load. Even on my desktop, they run slow. And
I was going to say the Harry Potter websites and stuff were all done in Flash.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the Harry Potter website is so bad.
Pain, absolute pain.
It loads up, and it loaded up because then you get a counter saying that it's loading up.
Yeah, exactly. And they didn't optimize anything, and they'd import these 5 meg graphics, and it was just bad.
Only 5 megs? No.
Well, okay, maybe 50. So Flash got a pretty bad reputation. I mean, as it was, admittedly, it can be a bit of a resource hog, especially if you're sloppy.
What about the part where my CPU lifts off with the fan?
Well, yeah, okay. I mean, that can happen, I suppose.
It's not these parts of Flash that we're talking about replacing, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, you can't really replace part of Flash without getting rid of the whole evil thing. But so anyway, Flash did continue to improve, and eventually what they did was they went to a true object-oriented language. They changed ActionScript significantly with ActionScript 3, and it became true object-oriented, and all of a sudden, a lot of developers started looking at it seriously as a real development platform for enterprise applications. It wasn't just for games anymore or animation. And that's where you get all your Flex developers and people using Flex Builder and other IDEs. But so that came along, and it was great and all, but Flash is still a bit of a resource hog, but not a bad solution for a lot of things. For video, it's fantastic. The FLV format is actually a really good internet format. For games, suddenly you had some new abilities there. Not only did you have your great graphics and animation, but you've got a full object-oriented language behind it. So, it made it a very versatile tool. Well, life was happy for Adobe, and then the iPhone came along.
Dun.
Yeah. Now, I have my own personal reasons as to, or theories as to why Steve Jobs said what he did, where, he came out and said Flash is outdated technology. And in some ways, at the time that he said it, he was definitely right. But there wasn't a good replacement. HTML5 was a long way from being ready. And Steve Jobs, he's been known to do this before. He says, years ago, he said Apple is done with floppy disks, and they got rid of it, and the whole industry followed.
And they got rid of CDs and Blu-rays.
Yeah, that's true. And so, but I mean, Mac was the first computer to come out without actually having a floppy drive in the computer. These days, what was that? Yeah, it was good time. It worked well. Flash, the problem was there wasn't a good substitute available yet. Is there? Still, no. Is there going to be? Well, we'll get there. But anyway, so Adobe has been scrambling a bit because, the iPhone and iPad, as everyone knows, doesn't support Flash. And so Adobe has had to adjust their thinking in a lot of things because once Steve Jobs said this, it kind of changed people's impression about Flash and where it was going and what its future was in the web.
Right.
Now,
so I'm wondering, and I'm going to derail you a little bit, I guess, but so we're talking about these mobile platforms. Is that really where the problems come in with Flash, or is there more to it than that?
Well, okay. I think one reason that Apple chose not to support Flash is because, okay, you saw these Harry Potter websites and some of these other movie websites, badly designed things. You still have designers which are not optimizing stuff sufficiently, and so there's a lot of stuff out there that is even taxing for a desktop computer. Not so much that it's Flash's fault, it's more the people developing and designing on Flash, and that goes back to its roots. When you have designers who are used to using Photoshop who have moved over to Flash and don't learn about optimizing and things, you end up with some fairly scary things. So imagine taking the first iPhone and trying to run one of those sites on it. You're not going to be as impressed with your iPhone. I test a lot of the stuff that I create on an original Motorola Droid, which only has a 600 megahertz processor, and sometimes it's downright painful.
Yeah.
You eliminate that problem if you take Flash out of the equation. So Apple became a big supporter of HTML5, and it was a great thing for the HTML5 movement.
Yep.
There wasn't a lot being done until Steve Jobs said Flash is outdated technology, and then everyone said, what are we going to go to? We're going to HTML5, and a lot of effort has been going into trying to get some standardization there, trying to further the platform to be a replacement for Flash.
Right.
So.
But so one thing that I'm seeing a lot of is the fact that, Flash is a fairly, and by fairly I mean very mature in technology, and HTML5 is still kind of, it's still kind of forming. I don't think they've finalized the spec, and from what I understand, they're not planning to do it, at least not anytime soon.
I think they have till 2022, I think, to get the final approved.
Is that all?
Yeah.
2,000 million, I think, actually.
What was it?
2,000 million.
2,000 million. Okay, yeah, that sounds about right. Give or take a few hundred years.
So, but the problem with HTML5, well, not problem. I guess one of the things I see with it is I have no idea what the 2020 100 billion. Well, I have no idea what that means, because what I'm seeing.
That's when the spec is actually going to be formalized and frozen. I think. That's
fully approved as a final version.
Right, but we're using features from it now, so it's not this pie in the sky thing that may or may not be finalized. When they add stuff to it, it winds up in our browsers.
Yeah, well,
and so
some of our browsers.
No, that's true.
The nice thing is Chrome and Firefox are really pioneering the technology. They're really taking it forward.
I'll agree with you on Chrome. Firefox is going a little slower.
Well, when you don't have a multi-billion-dollar company backing, actually they do have a multi-billion-dollar company backing them, which is Google. However, Google's focus used to be Firefox. Now it's Chrome. So hence, when you hire the Firefox developers and take them away from Firefox to build Chrome, you can see how there's a little lag there.
Right. There's Google and there's secondhand Google.
Right. and then there's Microsoft, which that's kind of an interesting thing, because Microsoft, although they are pushing forward in the HTML5 platform, and they really want to move towards making that a popularized standard, they're also one of the things slowing us down the most, in my opinion, because you still have people using older versions of Windows that, IE8 is as far as you can get if you're running any Windows before Vista.
Well, and I have my own conspiracy theories, too, that I think that Microsoft wants to regain market share. I would not be surprised at all if they don't focus a lot on gaming, introduce some stuff that other browsers can or won't implement, and try to regain market share by capturing the game market.
Well, they already kind of started that with Cut the Rope, right? That was an iPhone game, and then they paid the developers a bunch of money to port it over to IE9, and according to them, it works best in IE9. I tried it in Chrome, and it was a little wonky, but it was pretty impressive still.
Yeah, but see, here's the rub on Cut the Rope. It's a nice game. The port is beautiful. It plays very much like it does on your tablet. But the big problem with Cut the Rope is it's not really a system-taxing game. You don't have any scrolling backgrounds. You don't have lots of things moving on the screen at once. It's a port of a popular game, but by the same token, it's not really showing how impressive HTML5 is. Or, maybe they chose that game so that you didn't see the weaknesses.
Well, I think they did. I think they did some of it just because it's a popular game. A lot of people out there playing it. I like it. I think it's fun.
So, yeah, it is.
So, it grabs their attention. I think it was also an answer to, was it Angry Birds that was done in Chrome?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think they were just saying, see, we can do it too. Our browser's, a first-class citizen just like Chrome is.
They fired a bird across the bow.
But they're not... the thing I was saying is I see Microsoft implementing this stuff for games so they can say, because it's all about the marketing appeal, right? The sex appeal. So you say, oh, we've got these games that we can show off and it looks cool and everybody agrees about that. but then they still don't have the core features of things that everybody really needs. Like the stuff. So games are new with HTML5, but other things that people have been trying to do for years and years and years, like file uploads. Internet Explorer still doesn't. I mean, maybe they do in 10 or something, but last time I checked, they still don't have your basic file API and the kind of stuff that the other browsers have implemented when there wasn't a standard, have kind of consolidated their feelings about and created the standard and now implement in a way that kind of works more or less.
That's another area, too, that I've seen a lot of Flash used is uploading large files.
Yeah. So an interesting thing about, that I'm going to have to diss on HTML5 a little bit is, have you ever used just the raw XML HTTP request object?
Unfortunately.
So it's different in every browser, much like, anything that's part of the DOM. And so with HTML5, they created XHR level 2, or just XHR2, which gives you file upload events and stuff like that. Unfortunately, they still didn't quite agree on what events mean and when they should be fired. So there are upload events, and then there are download events. So request and response events. And they don't necessarily fire in the way that you would hope that they would. Same thing with the media elements that have been introduced. So like the audio tag, the video tag. Right now, I think it's great because you can use them and it'll work on a phone, but you got to do a lot of scratching your head to figure out why the events aren't firing. But then if you inspect the object manually, you can see that the object has changed. You shouldn't have to set timeout to check an object to see what its progress is. It's supposed to fire the progress event, things like that.
Well, okay, while you're hating on HTML5 over that, let me also say that it's fair to hate on Flash for that too. Unless you're dealing with a Flash media server, Flash itself doesn't handle files real well, except for, you can't upload a file into Flash. Flash can read image files or video files from another source on the internet, but it has no direct file control itself.
So is there some way that you can kind of trick it like the old school way in browsers is you override the content type to be user X char set user defined or something like that?
I believe securities prevent it from doing that, so that's why Flash programmers that get into a lot of that become real familiar with PHP or some other server-side solution.
Right. All right.
So doesn't Flash have a transfer format, like an answer to JSON, but something more binary-ish?
Not standardly. It does.
Or Flex?
Flex does, I believe. I don't do a lot with Flex. Most of what I do is using just the Flash Pro IDE. That works well for me when I'm developing games, just because I can be doing my graphics and my coding in the same place easily. One of the weird things about Flash and Flex is that Flash is built with the concept of a timeline, and although Flex no longer visibly has a timeline, it's still sitting there, and you do have to code with the timeline in mind. So it's kind of an unusual coding environment because even though you might not physically see the timeline, it does still exist. It still remembers. Flash still remembers that it is coming from a design animation background, and so while Flex adds a lot of additional tools, and you can do, I believe, some of that uploading and such, it still has some limitations as a result.
Nice. Okay.
So
I really want to dig into some of the other features of Flash and Flex development versus JavaScript and Canvas development. What are the differences between JavaScript and Flex, or ActionScript, I guess I should say?
Well, okay. Taking a look, one of the biggest problems that we have right now is HTML5 and JavaScript. They have to step up. They haven't been used a lot for games until just recently, because now they realize, oh, we're supposed to be a replacement for Flash. What does Flash do that we don't?
Right.
And at the moment, one of the biggest problems is we don't have the development tools. The Flash Pro IDE is really a nice environment for developing games, or at least I enjoyed using it a lot. There are new tools coming. There are some animation tools that are already available. For the Mac, there's Tumult's Hype.
This is for HTML5 and JavaScript. When you say
that's
there
for
are tools
HTML5,
available, right?
yeah.
Okay.
That was one of the earlier animation tools to come out. In truth, I haven't been overly impressed, but I think it's like $40 or $50. So fun to play around with, and From what I've seen so far, I've been taking a look at the previews of Adobe Edge, which is going to be their big HTML5 animation tool. It looks really great for doing banner ads. But,
that harkens back to our historical lesson a little bit.
And that's the sad thing, because ironically, the people who absolutely hate Flash and have been against it since the beginning, they're going to find it harder to block animations
HTML5.
done in HTML5 because it's going to be native. You can't just turn off a plugin, and you can't really say, "Oh, turn off all canvases," because Canvas is really what HTML5 is going to be about in a lot of ways. But the animation's clunky, and it writes so far in the preview of Adobe Edge that I've seen. It writes the animation in JavaScript, and it minifies it, but it's still this big, clunky-looking bit of code for creating objects on the screen, moving them around. It doesn't have the advantages of those vector graphics that you saw in Flash, where a classically trained animator can go in there and make a character move and do some really nice stuff. I mean, sure, there's lots of horrible, awful-looking Flash animation out there, but there's some really nice stuff that was done too. And at the moment, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, now SVG2 or something was supposed to be an answer to that. Like, there's supposed to be some sort of animation with SVGs. And then last I heard, it got dropped. Anybody know anything about that?
Nope.
Sorry.
That was one of the things with the acid test that Internet Explorer finally got a browser that passed the acid test, except for a couple of items. And by the time they had actually gotten on board and started developing towards it, it had been dropped from the standard, but nobody removed it from the acid test. It's kind of what I heard or read.
Yeah, I don't know. Things have been kind of strange with Microsoft. I haven't quite understood what they're doing exactly, because although they're really promoting HTML5, they've got the Metro UI version of IE10, which isn't supposed to support plugins. They're going to have a full version of IE10 too, but it looks like they are moving ahead with this idea of browsers not using plugins eventually. But they're also pushing ahead with Silverlight, which has they're pushing ahead with Silverlight.
Really?
As far as I can tell, I haven't seen that they've officially abandoned it yet. You still find tutorials on like lynda.com, new tutorials coming out. And that seems very surprising to me, because Silverlight is all about plugins, and it's kind of the Flash that never took off.
Well,
in a lot of ways.
I was under the impression that they had abandoned Silverlight. I mean, Metro doesn't use it at all, right? Metro is just all HTML5 stuff. And I thought I remember hearing a bunch of hullabaloo from developers that were grumpy because they invested in Silverlight, and then Microsoft was just dropping it. So
yeah, that may be the case.
I was under the impression they were dropping it.
So.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, we've kind of danced around it, and it seems like you're saying that the advantages of Flash are for things that you have to do a lot of heavy animation, right? So, and that's because of the tooling support, and maybe the way that animations get rendered into JavaScript code is a little bit messy. So other things that Flash used to be used for are lots of interactive websites. Is that still, I mean, you could just argue that was a bad idea in general. That's kind of dead, right? We don't need Flash for that anymore because we don't like that on the web in general. We don't want to do that in any technology, right?
Well,
when I talk about interactive website, I mean like the J.K. Rowling website we were talking about, where a little dog starts running across the screen, and you hear a doorbell in the background, and you can go to her about page by clicking on her phone and dialing in numbers and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are we talking about Microsoft Bob?
No. This is actually, if you go to J.K. Rowling's website, this is what you will see. It's a thing of beauty. Feels like she's trolling the internet.
See, here's the thing. It's tough to say what the future is for Flash right now. Certainly the industry is saying HTML5, we can eventually get rid of plugins. And,
I mean, so video is the other thing that I didn't mention, but that's being worked on with there's lots of HTML5 support for video in browsers. I think websites are kind of where it's lagging.
Let's hold off on video for a minute, because I want to talk about the interactive stuff, and it seems like Tom has something that he wants to say about it.
Here's the thing. The entertainment industry seems to like those crazy, overly interactive websites. I agree with you. I think that there are places to use Flash on a website, and there are certainly places not to. And those big clunky websites that are really painful for the user experience. We don't need it, but there are some people that if they're willing to pay for it, then that's how they want to represent their company or product. Who am I to argue with that? But and
a concerned citizen, maybe.
Well, yeah, that's fair. But the thing is, what we haven't addressed is what Flash is doing now. I said before that at the time Steve Jobs said that Flash was outdated technology. In some ways, he was right. But Adobe's actually put a bit of time into Flash recently. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Stage 3D, but that's been incorporated into the newest Flash player. And it's
What is
amazing. Stage 3D.
Tell me, what does it mean?
Okay, what Flash now does is it's capable of accessing your GPU. And it's making, it was originally designed.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this.
Adobe was originally, promoting it as, hey, we're going to have the ability for you to do real-time 3D rendering. What they didn't promote at the time, but people found out very quickly, is that this helped everything. Even 2D games, they're finding they're getting speeds up to 1,000 times faster than they were. Flash used to slow down a lot when you got a whole bunch of things moving on the screen at once. I've seen some of the demos with Stage 3D, and it's unbelievable. I mean, people are creating games now, full 3D rendered games, as an alternative to using DirectX or other 3D technologies. One of the nice things is you can develop it, on your Mac, on your Windows machine, and then easily port it to the other, port it over to iOS, port it over to Android, and even BlackBerry Playbook if you want those 4 people to have your game. But anyway, that's actually really a tremendous thing. And what the future of Flash is, it's kind of tough to say. It certainly still works on the web, but Adobe has made an interesting development platform that works. It's a really nice cross-platform development tool now, and so that kind of changes what Flash is.
Right.
So at that point, you're running into Unity a little bit, though, right? Because Unity is a browser plugin that has I don't understand it too well because I've never used it, nor will I, because I'm not a game developer. But I know that I can go to a website and it says, download this Unity plugin, and I download it and I can play like Counter-Strike basically in the browser.
Right. Okay, couple differences though. Difference number one, everyone's already got the Flash plugin. Unity, as you say, you've got to download it. It doesn't have near the same penetration. Number two, if you've ever talked to a Unity developer, one of the biggest drawbacks is creating that 2D user interface over your 3D environment. Unity evidently is a real pain to do that. While Flash still has all the old tools that it had before, plus the 3D built in. This is just an upgrade of your player, which most browsers are going to do on their own. So
does Flash have a 3D, like a game engine kind of already? Because Unity kind of seems like an engine, and Flash seems like it's something you would, if I understand you right, would someone have to like write the 3D engine that everyone uses for Flash?
There are frameworks that are available, and so it's not actually built into Flash, but there are frameworks.
But there are ones already out there.
Yes, and okay. There's some 2D frameworks. Starling seems to be the one of the more favored ones right now, and that incorporates very easily. I haven't done it yet. I've looked at how that works. I haven't. In truth, I'm actually pretty good at optimizing my games, so it hasn't been a real issue. But taking a look at some of its capabilities and how much faster it makes everything, suddenly Flash becomes a real competitor, and not just as a web development tool, but as for building apps, building executables for both Mac and Windows.
All right, so I think we're getting a little bit afield, just in the sense that we're really talking about JavaScript versus Flash kind of stuff, and we're running a little low on time. I really want to ask this question kind of to everybody, and that is, do you think that JavaScript and HTML will eventually take the place of Flash, or do you think that Flash will always have kind of a home on the web?
Well, I think a lot of the power players have signified that they would like to move away from plugins. I think we're a long way from fully being able to do that. too many people are still playing Words with Friends on Facebook. There is the video issue, which is a fairly significant one.
Yeah, let's poke that one in the eye really quickly. So basically, the issue with video is that not all browsers support all video formats.
Right.
So you have everybody except for like Mozilla and Opera, I think, support H.264, and then Mozilla and Opera prefer OGG, but there are a few other browsers that also support OGG, and then there's another one that Google came out with that is also supported across some but not others.
Yeah, WebM.
WebM, okay.
And
I think
Google,
that was supported in everything except for Safari, right?
and iOS.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I guess, yeah. If you want to
Safari,
count
mobile
those.
Safari.
Right. But Google's been threatening now since January of last year that they're going to drop H.264 from Chrome. They haven't. But
please, Lord, no.
they've been saying that for a long time. And their reasoning is they claim that H.264 is not truly open, which it isn't.
Firefox will adopt it because the possible royalty issues in the future.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
but
because
Flash owns this space because they have a player that's installed in nearly every browser, and as long as there's an FLV format behind it, it'll just play it.
Yeah. Well,
but isn't that wrapping H.264 ultimately? I mean, isn't the FLV just when it's not like a game thing or like a strong bad type thing, when it's actually a video, isn't FLV just a container for H.264?
Yeah, it is, but Adobe's taken care of all the licensing and everything. So
yeah.
H.264, it could get messy. I think technically, for instance, I was reading something, I'm not sure how accurate it was, so let me qualify that. But if you do an H.264 video on a pay site that's behind a pay subscription system, I think technically it's not royalty free at that point, and you may have to pay licensing fees to MPEG-LA. So
yeah, that's the core of the issue, though, is that MPEG-LA actually owns the rights, and I'm not sure if it's a patent or some kind of.
It's patents. It's like a ton of different patents, and MPEG-LA basically is your one source to go to for paying the licensing fees for all those patents.
Yeah. But anyway, so ultimately, in the end, will JavaScript and HTML5 be able to replace Flash?
Maybe, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard because anytime you want to make an improvement, you've got to get all the browsers to update and to be compatible, and that's been a problem just from the baby steps they've taken so far. And I can appreciate the desire to get rid of plugins. I don't agree with it. I don't think Flash is going to go away completely in the next 5 or probably even 10 years. It's so tightly embedded in so many different areas, and changes in the browsers happen so slowly. It has been speeding up. Google's put a lot of money behind it. Apple's put a lot of money behind it. But I don't think it's going to completely replace Flash for a while. I do think there are going to be a lot of efforts being made to try and duplicate what Flash is capable of, and I think that will help significantly.
And also, Flash is like a lot of things. It's not just a single, because we're talking about HTML5, and there's the canvas, there's the video, there's,
audio.
So Flash does it all, and it does it all in every browser. Even if we get video worked out, we still got to work out the other things. So that's a good point, too.
Yeah, and I think you make valid points. I think the only area that it really becomes an issue in is the mobile arena. Because, I've had Android phones that had a Flash player installed as part of the browser, and some areas Flash worked fine, other areas it really kind of didn't. But then you're on the iOS, you're out of luck. If they've made an app that will do it like YouTube has, then I guess you're okay in that area. But otherwise, tough.
Well, and keep in mind, Android is only going to have it temporarily.
Right.
They just recently came out with the 11.2 player, and they said that's the last one we're making for Android. Mm-hmm. So 5 years from now, it's not going to happen. Of course, who knows? 5 years from now, you may be using tablets that are running modified versions of OS X and Windows 8, Windows 9, whatever. Because those are all moving towards being touchscreen friendly and eventually being your tablet operating systems.
Yeah, and both of those companies have made serious progress toward unifying the experience. I mean, if you've gotten OS X Lion even, I mean, there are a lot of elements there that have definitely moved in that direction. And if you look under the covers on OS X, it's running on the BSD kernel just like OS X is. So
yeah. Can I bring up one other thing real quick?
Yeah.
The other thing that JavaScript is currently falling short in is making it difficult for people to take your code. With some of the work that I do, I just created a website that has 9 games on it for a client, and these games are very specific proprietary games that are designed to help with certain medical issues. It was very important to the client that when these games are made, they need to be encrypted. They can't be easily taken. And I know JavaScript and HTML5 will eventually come up with a solution for that. But at the moment, that's something else that's unfortunately missing.
What do you mean encrypted? You mean like actually encrypted, or
so that you can close the source? Because as it is, you have to pass. I mean, you pass actual code to the browser to execute. And so if you write a game or some other proprietary software, sure, you have copyright on that, but there's nothing to actually keep somebody else from using your code.
Exactly.
Well, what's the difference in Flash? Like, I see the same thing. You got bytecode and you've got bytecode. You run a prettifier on either one and you get back code that is a little difficult to interpret, but
Yes, you can decompile Flash or Flex, but it's not, I guess it's not the same thing.
Well, there's encryption that I use on all my Flash games. You can take it, you can decrypt it. What you decrypt, you're not going to be able to do anything with, and you're not going to be able to re-encrypt, to recompile that either. Right. It's too messy, and it would be more work to try and figure out what I did from the encrypted code than it would be just to write it from scratch.
Right.
Well, I think the same's true for JavaScript.
Maybe.
I mean, I like that argument just doesn't fly really well with me, because I've decompiled Java code, and if you leave the debug statements in, then you get the exact code back. And I've looked at, I mean, C code's kind of hard to decompile, but you can run a decompiler or an unminifier. And when I think of minified JavaScript, to me, it's just bytecode that happens to be something that you can open in a text editor,
Right.
Like, by the time it's gone through all the optimizations that it goes through, if you run it through Clojure, or something intelligent like that, then, I see it just as bytecode.
Okay.
And then it goes to machine code anyway.
There's a little bit of truth to that, but it's not on the same level as actually getting bytecode, and decompiled bytecode is considerably harder to read in my experience then. But it may just be my familiarity with JavaScript. But
I don't use a lot of decompiled code, so I'm not really one to speak out.
Yeah, see, Flash, you actually have to decompile it, and if it's been encrypted when you decompile it, you can't compile it again. It won't work. Flash won't know what to do with it.
Right. So then you can't modify it to make it into the same game with different graphics.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense.
I have a question. If we're done with this, if not, then
no, go ahead.
Keep going. So we've kind of taken it for granted that we want JavaScript and HTML5 to replace Flash. I mean, the question you asked assumes that you would want to do that, but we haven't really stated the benefits maybe of HTML5 and JavaScript. Why? I mean, so why do we want to replace Flash? Why do we think it's better? I think that's important to say.
Well, I think the one thing that Tom keeps pointing out is moving away from plugins.
But why?
Yeah, and that's the one I keep hearing too. It's native to the browser. So,
but why is that better?
Yeah, that is a good question. And
I'm being devil's advocate. I think it is for most things, but I think it's interesting to hear about.
I think for speed and resources, it is better if it can be native to the browser. However, for changes and upgrades, that's going to be slower just because you have to get everyone on board instead of just Adobe saying, we've added this.
Yeah, and here's your new player.
Yeah, exactly. But again, then you're dealing with a much more open community, and changes may happen slower, but it's less of a monopoly deciding, or monarchy, as the case might be.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't really thought much about that, Jameson, so I don't have a powerful opinion on that. But yeah, I can definitely see that. I do, in a lot of cases, think that a lot of things are closed that probably could be open sourced and benefit more from that and benefit the community more than that. So that's something that I like, but it's not, and the performance stuff makes sense, but I don't see a real strong draw one way or the other. And I'm probably going to get hate mail for that. But
typing you some hate mail right now. I think the biggest thing is something that Tom mentioned, just that having an open community makes up for any other weaknesses that you might have in the platform. The fact that there are so many people working on this out in the open, I think means that it'll advance a lot. And even if the actual environment doesn't advance, people will figure out how to do cool stuff with it.
Right.
This is definitely, so I'm not in the Flash community at all. So I'm not like, I don't have my ear to the ground to that. But I have never heard someone say, check out this awesome thing that I figured out I could do with Flash. It just seems like it's people doing stuff that they have done. Like, I mean, games are awesome. I love playing games. But it doesn't seem like there are any, I haven't heard of any technological advances or things that are coming out of Flash. So I want to hear Tom's rebuttal of that, though, because he knows it much better than I do.
Well, see again, a lot of it is, some of the greatest advancements do have to come from Adobe starting it up. Like, Stage 3D is fantastic. The problem is it may be too late, because a lot of people have it in their heads that Flash is gone or on its way out. Now, I think for enterprise applications, there's no way I could recommend that someone do that in Flash today. That doesn't make sense. There are a variety of other ways that you can do that. For games, Flash is still king. Yes, you can build Cut the Rope or Angry Birds in JavaScript and HTML5, but you're cutting out, I think it's something like 26% of browsers still are not using HTML5, so you're cutting that out while Flash is...
So I got a question there, because people are always bringing up these statistics about browsers, and I keep on wondering, where does that make sense? Like, what does that 26% mean? Because if that 26% is, people inside of Wells Fargo and down at, Fort Knox or whatever, do we care that they're not playing the Flash games?
Oh, I absolutely do, and I'll tell you why. The largest demographic that plays my games, it's women 40 and over at work. Because my games are cooler than Windows Solitaire, I guess. So that absolutely matters to me. I get more hits on Friday during the day than I do Saturday and Sunday combined. So something to think about.
That's funny.
Interesting, because I come from the perspective of being in a college town, and there's a few people that don't have a real browser, but they also don't have friends, so they don't know about those games anyway.
That was a little bit of an ad hominem attack. You don't upgrade your browser, you don't have any friends.
Well, no, I mean, it's true though. Everybody who has a tech friend, anybody who's got a friend that's a little bit techie isn't going to let you use Internet Explorer.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't know if this happens in your neighborhood, but I'm like the computer go-to guy. When someone gets a new printer that they can't get working, call Tom. I'm helping out people that are a generation older than me, and they're running Windows XP. They're running older operating systems. And when you say, you really should change browsers, oh, I like Internet Explorer. That's what I've been using. And, not everyone is as tech savvy. And,
That's why they shouldn't be using Internet Explorer. If they're not tech savvy, they don't have the degree that of experience they need to navigate through that minefield.
Well, but it's what they're used to. Yeah. And, they might be running IE6. Well, I guess soon it's about to force them to IE8. But
AJ, you just need to go find yourself some grandparents.
Actually,
because mine are 80-something, and
No, here's the thing.
They don't know what browsers are. They know what the internet is, and the internet is the blue
my
key.
My grandmother was a programmer at the Pentagon. Okay, so
nice.
Okay, you're exceptional right there in your grandparents.
However, she does not know a computer any more than anybody else, because the computers that she programmed on were quite different from what she's using today.
Punch cards, fun stuff.
Yeah.
But no, a lot of times with friends that I have or family members or whatever, I just put Linux on their computer and I'm like, look, all you're doing is checking your email. Here's Linux. Here's Chrome. You'll never get a virus. You never need to upgrade. You're good to go.
I've
And
tried
then they
that.
buy a new printer that has no driver.
Then they have to recompile the kernel. Then they're doomed.
Yeah.
What?
All right.
What printer doesn't have a driver for Mac and Linux though? I mean, like that's pretty weird. I've not plugged in a printer that requires a driver in quite some time.
Check out some of these all-in-ones that everybody buys these days, because then you need the scanner, the printer, the fax, and everything.
That could be scary.
All right, I've got one more question, and then we're going to get to the picks, even though we're getting dangerously close to our hour. And that question is, what do you think it means for Flash that Adobe donated Flex to the Apache Foundation?
The Flex
projects
community,
go to die.
Yeah, the Flex community was not happy about that. They were like, all right, time to learn something new.
Okay, so that's one thing that I really don't understand. And granted, I made a lot of friends at the Apache Foundation over the last year. But why don't they see it as an opportunity to really kind of take the reins on Flex and make it into whatever it is that they want?
Well, because sadly, the best people for that don't have time.
Fair enough. So they're not happy about it. They're trying to find another technology. Are they moving to JavaScript and HTML, or are they just moving to like iOS or something?
Oh, Adobe is all about going to HTML5. You know, they've got this Adobe Edge coming out, which is, you know, it's an animation tool. It in some ways reminds me of Flash 3. But it's all about creating animation for HTML5 using JavaScript. Now, they haven't killed Flash. I'm not sure what will happen to Flash. They did stage 3D. I think ultimately it's going to come down to dollars as to whether or not continued support happens there. If too many people run away from Flash, then it'll go the way of Director and Shockwave. If not, then, we'll see them continue to make some changes, but I think at a much slower rate, because HTML5 and JavaScript are definitely the future. They're what's interesting. I don't think Flash is going to suddenly vanish, particularly in the game industry. I don't see Zynga suddenly changing all their games into HTML5 games. I mean, it may happen eventually, but we're talking about a pretty slow transition, just like anything on the web these days.
All right. Well, that's about all the time we have. So let's go ahead and jump into the picks. Did we warn you about picks, Tom?
I know nothing about picks.
Okay. So basically what we do is we just pick stuff that we like. It can, but doesn't have to be programming related. So, I mean, we've picked movies, music, books. We have picked programming stuff. So if there are some things that you want to share, then you can definitely do that. And with that, let's just go ahead and let AJ do his picks first.
All right. So have we talked about the Hunger Games at all?
I don't think so.
Nope.
The movie or the book?
Anything, I don't know. I went and saw the movie a while back, and I really liked it. It was good. I was kind of expecting, I was hoping it would be good, but I had that kind of half-heartedness about it that maybe it'd just kind of be a flop, but I really enjoyed it, and people that have read the books also enjoyed it, felt that it followed it well. So
have you read the books?
The Hunger Games. No, I haven't. I'm not as avid of a reader as I used to be.
Yeah. My opinion, the movie was better. Anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Sorry I interrupted you. Anything else?
No, that's all I got.
Okay. Jameson?
I have a million picks today. I'll just do half of them. All right, the first one is a game called Thunderstone. It's a deck building card game. It's kind of like Dominion, if you guys are familiar with them. Basically, you buy cards to fill up your deck, and you go in and fight monsters in a dungeon and stuff. It's a super nerdy game, but it's really fun. My wife and I played it on Sunday, and we enjoyed it a lot. The first time, it takes a while to learn all the rules and stuff, but after that, it's pretty quick. It's probably under half an hour around there next time you play. So that was great fun. You can play with 2 or 4 people out of the box, which is good because we don't have as many nerdy board game friends as we would like. So sometimes we have to play by ourselves. The next one is a tutorial. Not really a tutorial. It's a guide called How Browsers Work from HTML5 Rocks. And it's pretty awesome. It goes through the rendering workflow. I don't know how to describe that. Kind of how browsers parse the DOM and render stuff, the networking stuff that happens underneath. So it's just a really good overview overview of the internals of a web browser, which is important if you're doing stuff with a browser. It's really good to know how the underlying layers work. And then my last pick, I find myself having to know calculus again, and it's been like 3 years since I last had to know calculus. And there's this really great book that was written in 1912 called Calculus Made Easy. It's so good. Oh my gosh. It's not a math book. It's like a book explaining math. So the guy writes it to a really general audience, and he like makes fun of mathematicians throughout the whole book. Like the intro talks about how mathematicians are fools and what one fool can do another fool can do and stuff. It's just really like old-timey, but really informative at the same time. So if you need to learn calculus for any reason, this is a really good book for it. That was my picks.
Nice. All right, I'll go ahead and jump in, go next. So one pick that I'm going to pick is I just got a shock mount for my microphone. So let's see if you can hear this.
Oh.
Could you hear that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, before I would tap it and it'd be like, wrong. And so anyway, I ordered a shock mount for my Heil PR40. And anyway, they're really nice podcasting equipment. If you are doing any kind of serious podcasting, you should probably have one. And it makes it, because I'm always bumping the boom arm on my microphone, and so if I do that now, you can't hear it. So I'll go ahead and put that a link to that in the show notes. One other pick that I want to put out there that is just something that I tell a lot of people to do when they're trying to set up a website, and I know that there are a lot of people who build their own websites that are going to kind of poo-poo this, but if you need a really quick website, you want to get it up fast and make it work, then what I recommend to most people is that they go to a company called Bluehost, and I'll put a link in the show notes as well. And what you do there is they have a cPanel that allows you to set up WordPress, and you can get a website up pretty fast with WordPress and make things work. Now, if you need something a little more customized, you want to come talk to me so that I can build that out for you in Ruby on Rails. But in a lot of cases, if you're just trying to put information up about your business or put up a blog or something, WordPress is a great go. Anyway, Tom, what are your picks?
Okay, I think first of all, being a game developer, I have to mention a game first. DC Online, it has gone free, or it has a free-to-play option. I have played other superhero MMORPGs like Champions Online, which was a real letdown, even though I played years ago the original tabletop paper game. But DC Online has a free-to-play version that will give you hours and hours of fun, and I just started playing it a couple weeks ago and have thoroughly enjoyed it. Make sure your first character can fly. The cities are flying around. The cities is just fun, even if you're not doing any of the missions.
So like real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I make sure I can fly. That's the first thing.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Jameson in a cape, he's way fast.
Let's see. For books, these have been out for a while, and actually he not too long ago put out a new one. But the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson, if you haven't read those, they're worthwhile. They're kind of it's an interesting world that he portrays there, and it's kind of fun unraveling the mysteries there.
Terrific books, terrific.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and as I say, he just came out with a fourth one that I think takes place in the same world, but in the future a bit. Mm-hmm.
You know that he's from Utah, right?
Yeah, he teaches at BYU.
Yep.
Anyway, and then if you are interested in getting up to speed on HTML5, JavaScript 5, CSS3, all those other fun things, I'm just going to put a plug for lynda.com, Lynda. People have probably heard of it before, but if you've never actually signed up, sign up for a month. It's like $25 for 1 month. I keep a yearly membership, and I have found the best way to quickly get up to date on a variety of technologies. So those are mine.
Terrific. All right, well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. A few business items here. One is that I'm going to be doing some online training, so if you're interested, keep an eye out on my Twitter account, CMaxW. Some of it's going to be related to JavaScript, like I'm going to be doing one on building solid JSON APIs. So another thing is that we are in iTunes. So if you want to get the podcast, that's a good way to do it. If you're on something else, we do have an RSS feed link on the website. And I'm going to hear lots of cheering for this. We're finally in Stitcher. So I've had
Yahoo! I don't know what Stitcher is.
I've had people begging me to get the podcast into Stitcher. So this, Ruby Rogues, and the Ruby Freelancer Show are all in Stitcher Stitcher is a program that you get on your iPhone or Android phone, and it downloads your podcast for you and lets you listen on there. It keeps track of your progress and all that stuff. So it's kind of an alternative to iTunes, but you have to submit your shows separately to them, so they won't just pick up your shows on their own. So since I hadn't submitted them, they weren't in Stitcher. So anyway, I finally went and did that. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Beyond that, we're trying to line up new shows, good shows. So go to javascriptjabber.com, leave us a comment, and click on the feedback tab and tell us what you want to hear about so that we can get those people on the show. And with that, we'll wrap up. Thanks again for coming, Tom.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot
you.
for having me.
Yeah,
maybe in a
informative.
while I can come back and talk about building games in HTML5 and JavaScript once I've made the transition.
Yeah, JavaScript games that don't suck.
If you want to do anything with the
Tom.
audio tag, let me know, because I can give you some pointers.
All right, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and anyway, are there other places that people can find you, Twitter or whatever?
Yeah, on Twitter, TOMDEI is my Twitter account. You can easily find me at my website, dedge.com, dedge.com. I'm on Facebook too, or LinkedIn for that matter. Look me up, I'm there. Just on Facebook, it's tom.beatty, Beatty. And LinkedIn, if you do a search for the Dimensions Edge Inc., you'll find me there too.
All right. Well, thanks again for coming. For those of you